What would you do if one person in your workplace didn't just make your life harder, but seemed determined to burn everything down on the way out? And what if, after you offered them an easy way out, no punishment, no drama, no ruined future, they decided instead to lie, cheat, accuse people of crimes, and try to destroy your career along with their own? Because that's exactly what happened to me. And to this day, I've never seen someone sabotage their own life as spectacularly as the soldier I'm about to tell you about. Her real name isn't important. Let's just call her Private Wiggles. Most of the soldiers in my command were exactly what you'd hope for: hard-working, reliable, and surprisingly creative when the Army put them in strange situations. They didn't complain much. They did their jobs, took pride in doing them well, and at the end of the month, they went home with a paycheck and a sense that they had earned it. When I took over the unit, I expected the usual mix of personalities, a few small problems here and there, but nothing I couldn't handle. Then, about 2 or 3 days after I officially took command, my platoon sergeant Maggie walked into my office with that look every commander learns to recognize immediately. It's the look that says, "You're not going to like what I'm about to tell you." She explained that one of the newer soldiers, a young private named Wiggles, might not be able to go on the upcoming training exercise in Thailand because she had just undergone an outpatient medical procedure. The problem was that we were only about a week away from departure, and I needed to confirm the final roster. That roster determined everything: transportation, food, housing, medical support. If someone wasn't going, I needed to know right then. So I called Wiggles in and asked her directly. I didn't pressure her. I didn't threaten her. I simply asked if she was physically able to travel and participate in the training. She looked me straight in the eye and said it wouldn't be a problem. She said she could handle it. And at that moment, I had no reason not to believe her. A week later, we landed in Thailand and set up on a Thai army base. It was the kind of place where everything ran on discipline and routine. You wake up early, you do your job, you deal with the heat, and you move on. For the first 2 days, everything seemed normal. Then, on the third day, someone from the medical section literally ran across the camp looking for me. Wiggles was in the medical tent, barely able to stand from the pain. When I got there, the physician assistant pulled me aside and quietly explained the situation. Wiggles admitted she had recently had an abortion, which explained the earlier medical procedure, but that wasn't even the worst part. The real problem was that she had an extreme case of pelvic inflammatory disease caused by untreated infections. The PA, who had seen everything you could imagine in the Army, looked genuinely shocked at how bad it was. But the strange part was that it was still treatable. They had the antibiotics. They could fix it. All she had to do was take the medication and follow instructions. Instead, she refused. Within a day, her section sergeant came to me and the first sergeant with 2 new problems. Wiggles wouldn't take the antibiotics, and she was suddenly saying she wanted out of the Army completely. At that point, I sat her down and gave her the simplest deal I've ever offered anyone. If she wanted out, I would help her. I would start the paperwork as soon as we got back to Hawaii, and I would do everything I could to make sure she left with an honorable discharge. The only thing she had to do was follow the rules until the paperwork went through. Show up where she was supposed to be, do the bare minimum, take the medication. That was it. She agreed immediately, but it turned out that keeping a simple promise for a few weeks was too much for her. During the rest of the exercise in Thailand, her sergeant had to practically force her to take her medication when she could even find her. She disappeared constantly. She created drama. At one point, she even accused the first sergeant of sleeping with her, which was easily disproven, but still caused chaos for everyone involved. By the time we got back to Hawaii, I was already exhausted dealing with her. I still intended to keep my word. I started the process to get her discharged the easy way, thinking it would save everyone time and stress. Instead, that's when everything spiraled completely out of control. She started drinking even though she was underage. She and her husband forged documents to try to get into base housing they didn't qualify for. She showed up at the clinic with bruises because her husband had literally kicked her in the face with his combat boots. Then she stopped showing up for work altogether. Some days, we couldn't even find her. At one point, she slashed all 4 tires on her husband's car and attacked him with a knife. The military police got involved, and somehow he ended up in trouble while she walked away, pretending to be the victim. And just when I thought it couldn't get any worse, one of my sergeants came into my office and quietly told me he had seen her the night before at a strip club in Honolulu. Not as a customer, as a performer. And even worse, she had convinced another young soldier to go with her. That was the moment I realized something important. She didn't just want to leave the army. She wanted to destroy everything on her way out. The honorable discharge I had offered her was completely off the table at that point. I had no choice but to start the process for a special court-martial. Even then, I still underestimated how far she was willing to go. My legal advisor told me that her actions probably wouldn't lead to serious jail time. Maybe a couple of weeks of confinement, maybe a fine, and definitely a discharge that would follow her for the rest of her life. It sounded harsh, but after everything she had done, it also sounded fair. I warned her defense attorney that she was going to be difficult. He laughed it off and told me he had handled worse cases. I didn't argue. I just let him learn the hard way. Here's where the story really turns. Normally, someone waiting for a court-martial would just stay in the barracks. But my legal advisor pointed out something interesting. Wiggles had managed to meet every single condition required to justify pre-trial confinement. She was a risk to others. She was a risk to herself. And she had already shown that she wouldn't follow orders. If I presented the facts correctly, there was a chance the military magistrate would send her straight to the brig until the trial. So, I did exactly that. A few days later, the magistrate listened to the evidence and approved the confinement. When the first sergeant and platoon sergeant went to pick her up, she refused to open the door, even though they could clearly hear her inside. Eventually, she came out, and within hours she was sitting in the brig instead of causing chaos in my unit. For the first time in weeks, everything felt quiet again. But the real satisfaction didn't come from sending her to the brig. It came from what happened next. Her own defense attorney eventually came back to me and asked for a deal. Time served and a discharge, no full trial. Even my own boss, who had started to think I was being too harsh, changed his mind after seeing how many lies she was still telling. Every person who tried to defend her eventually realized the same thing. She was destroying herself. When she was finally released to finish the discharge process, she still couldn't behave for even a few days. She kept breaking the rules. She kept sneaking out. She kept creating problems that forced us to tighten the restrictions again and again. In the end, her attorney practically begged to get her on a plane as quickly as possible just to stop the damage. And that's exactly what happened. We didn't just drop her off at the airport and hope for the best. I assigned an officer to escort her all the way to the gate and stay there until the plane actually took off. We wanted to be absolutely certain she didn't somehow turn around and come back to cause more chaos. When that plane finally lifted off the runway, it felt like the entire unit could finally breathe again. Looking back on it now, the part that still surprises me the most is how easily she could have avoided all of it. I had offered her a clean exit from the very beginning. No punishment, no ruined record, no lifelong consequences. All she had to do was behave for a few weeks. Instead, she chose lies, drama, and chaos every single day until there was nothing left to save. Sometimes revenge isn't loud. It isn't dramatic. It isn't about screaming or fighting or humiliating someone in public. Sometimes revenge is just standing back, letting someone reveal exactly who they are, and watching the consequences hit them one by one. And in her case, those consequences followed her all the way out the door.